Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the third video on recognizing the symptoms of fraud. In the previous two videos, we explored the importance of symptoms in detecting fraud. We delved into accounting indicators of fraud. We also examined the role of internal controls in fraud detection and identified different fraud symptoms. In this video, we will elucidate how lifestyle changes can aid in fraud detection. We will discuss how behavioral symptoms contribute to fraud detection. And finally, we will explore the significance of tips and complaints in identifying fraud. Please like, subscribe, and share my channel to search for accounting lessons and hit the notification bell button to alert you for the latest video. For all of your questions, comments, and suggestions, please put them in the comment section below. And for webinar and guest speaker invites, please send me a message at accountingamir@gmail.com. We hope that this video helps students in their academic development and teachers in enhancing their lesson plans and teaching methodologies. So let us start with understanding fraudster behavior. Fraudsters are typically motivated by financial pressure, which can arise from genuine needs or excessive needs. After meeting their financial needs through fraud, perpetrators tend to elevate their lifestyles. Fraudsters commonly spend embezzled funds on luxury items. Examples include purchasing a new car, buying expensive toys, taking lavish vacations, remodeling homes or upgrading to more expensive houses, purchasing expensive jewelry or clothing, increasing spending on day to day expenses. Now, few fraudsters save what they steal, they spend immediately all their funds. Confidence in fraudulent schemes grows over time, leading to larger thefts. Fraudsters often live beyond their legitimate means, displaying lifestyles incongruent with their income. Let us look into an example illustrating changes in lifestyle due to embezzlement. Kay and her husband embezzled nearly 3 million over 7 years' time. They avoided having children to mitigate potential sequences. They used stolen funds to buy a $500,000 home, luxury cars, Maserati, Rolls Royce, Jeep Cherokee, expensive artwork, a boat, and extensive landscaping. They hosted lavish parties with expensive foods without arousing suspicion among co workers. Let us look into another example that demonstrates the transformation of lifestyle following fraudulent activities. Randy embezzled over 600,000 from his friend's struggling company. Despite the company's financial difficulties, Randy lived a lavish lifestyle, owning a Porsche, a mountain cabin, and indulging in expensive vacations. He even loaned 16,000 to the business owner to alleviate cash flow issues. The owner never questioned Randy's source of wealth despite his modest salary. So, the lesson learned from these two cases is that the organization should stay vigilant about abrupt lifestyle changes in employees, particularly if they exceed their income. Implement robust control measures that can discourage and identify fraudulent behaviors, reducing organizational risks. Employee education is key, offering training or fraud awareness, and promote a culture of whistleblowing that can empower staff to report suspicious activities, thereby preventing fraud. Let us talk about understanding behavioral patterns in fraud perpetrators. Research in psychology suggests that individuals, especially first time fraud perpetrators, experience overwhelming emotions of fear and guilt following the commission of a crime. No specific behavior inherently indicates fraud, rather, alterations in behavior act as a sign. People usually know for kindness might adopt intimidating and confrontational attitudes, whereas typically aggressive individuals might unexpectedly exhibit kindness. Even the fraud perpetrators recognize a behavior shift. For instance, a woman who embezzled $400,000 confessed to emitting signals of guilt, admitting, "I couldn't meet anyone gaze." A man who embezzled over $150,000 disclosed fluctuating behavior like working excessively long hours or enduring extended periods of despondency. Understanding the behavioral patterns of fraud perpetrators enables early detection of fraudulent activities within the organizations. Noticing changes in behavior such as increased stress, aggression, or withdrawal can prompt further investigation and proactive measures. Training employees and implementing robust internal controls can strengthen organizational resilience against fraud risk. Let us look into a case study, the Crazy Eddie fraud cross case. Eddie Entar, the mastermind behind the Crazy Eddie fraud scheme, exhibited increasingly intimidating behavior before ultimately disappearing. Crazy Eddie Incorporation, a retail chain with 42 stores across New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania, specialized in selling entertainment and consumer electronic products. Antar appointed several family members, including his father, brother, uncle, cousin, and father's cousin, as officers of the company. It was alleged that he inflated the company's inventory by more than 65 million. As the fraud was exposed, Antar's behavior allegedly became increasingly aggressive. Eventually, overwhelmed by the fear of being apprehended and prosecuted, he fled the country and sought refuge in Israel. However, he was later extradited back to the United States and sentenced to prison for his involvement in the fraud. So, the lesson that we can learn from this case is that the companies should recognize shift in behavior, and this can be signal for potential fraud perpetrators. Vigilance is key in detecting unusual behavior patterns indicative of fraudulent activity. Establishing comprehensive internal controls is crucial for preventing and detecting fraud within the organization. Effective controls help mitigate risk and safeguard against fraudulent activities. Next, let us understand the impact of stress. And we will talk about two other examples of behavioral changes driven by the stress of committing fraud that were observed in the case of Donald Shellin, CEO of Regina Vacuum Company, and Leston Ney, CEO of First National of Chicago. Despite their differing actions, both struggled to cope with the pressure. Before his fraudulent activities were uncovered, Shellen sought solace by confessing his entire scheme to his priest. In contrast, Ney's response was more drastic. He penned a suicide note detailing his fraudulent actions, ultimately taking his own life. However, Fraud perpetrators choose to cope with the stress induced by guilt, whether through intimidation, confession, or suicide. The presence of stress remains constant. The following fraud case illustrates how stress can change the behavior of a perpetrator. Johnson Marine is an industrial diving company servicing marine related issues. Rick Smith uncovered a serious fraud perpetrated by Joseph Sammons, vice president of the company. Joseph used intimidating tactics, instructing the part time accountant Rick Smith to report only to him and to pay bills and seek guidance exclusively from him. Risk discovered irregularities such as unrecorded petty cash, inflated insurance policies, naming Joseph as the beneficiary, and outstanding credit card bills. Rick uncovered unauthorized payments to TMC Consulting linked to Joseph's address without any documented services rendered. Rick reported his findings to the president, who confronted Joseph, and then Joseph evaded the confrontation and disappeared, relocating to California without leaving a forwarding address. So, this case highlights the behavioral changes exhibited by a fraud perpetrator under stress, including intimidation, micromanagement, and attempts to conceal fraudulent activities before eventually fleeing to evade accountability. Next case is on examining the impact of leadership style on organizational income outcomes. The HIH fraud scandal, uncovered in 2002, remained undetected for an extended period because of manipulation and intimidation tactics employed by an executive. Adopting an authoritarian approach, he wielded considerable control, allowing him to carry out illicit activities unchecked. Let us talk about this fraud. Established in 1968 by Raymond Williams and Michael Payne, HIH initially thrived under Payne's leadership. However, due to health issues, Payne stepped back from his executive roles in 1997 and assumed the position of chairman for the main UK entity in 1999. He held various directorial positions within the company until September 2000. HIH, a prominent insurer of Australia's home building market, served as the underwriter for numerous insurance company policies, including professional indemnity, public liability, home warranty, and travel insurance. The key personnel at HIH were Raymond Williams. He served as the CEO of HIH from its establishment in 1968 to October 2000. Joining him as key figure were George and Terence Cassidy, who assumed roles in senior management in 1969 and 70 respectively. Both remained in their positions until September 2000 and March 2001 respectively. Williams exerted significant influence over the management of HIH, as many key members of the upper management team had worked closely with him for over 25 years. Despite this, they were reluctant to challenge his decisions or scrutinize his motives. Under the influence of the charismatic CEO, Ray Williams, the board witnessed a succession of misguided expansions, resulting in losses exceeding 3 billion for HIH. The Royal Commission report investigating HIH for the Australian government found that the lack of critical questioning and strategic direction contributed significantly to the collapse of HIH insurance group. The report highlighted a failure to articulate clear strategic goals or missions for HIH, with neither Williams nor the board of directors being able to explain them if asked. Despite HIH's rapid growth and transition to a public company, William continued to operate it much like a small company, retaining control over decision making and using business accounts for personal purposes, thereby overriding internal controls, leading to an eventual downfall of HIH. It has been contended that HIH collapse was not primarily due to systematic fraud, but rather stemmed from two key factors. First, HIH operated with a flawed business model that consistently underestimated its claim provisions. Secondly, the governance structures, including the board and senior management, were ineffective as they permitted Williams to exert disproportionate influence over decision making process. This case highlights the importance of strategic leadership in governance, need to promote a culture of accountability and inquire and robust oversight and internal controls. Individuals like Raymond Williams exhibiting such behavior are often referred as sociopaths or psychopaths. They lack sense of guilt or conscience. Let us talk about another example of a psychopathic individual. Two nationally renowned polygraph experts were puzzled and eager to interrogate confessed killer Marvin Harris following his successful passage of a lie detector test. Harris claimed that he did so to prevent the revelation of his fraudulent document activities. Despite initially denying any involvement in the killings during the polygraph test, Harris displayed signs of truthfulness which left the experts perplexed. What baffled the experts most was not just Harris' ability to deceive the test, but the extent of his success. Usually, a score of plus 6 on the truthfulness scale would indicate honesty. But Harris' score was twice that, registering a plus 12. This outcome contradicted the experts' expectations, leading to the realization that Harris lacked a conscience, enabling him to engage in fraudulent activities and murder without remorse. Harris' ability to deceive the lie detector test raised questions about its reliability. Lack of remorse or conscience allowed Harris to commit crime without guilt. This case highlights the limitations of relying solely on polygraphic tests in legal proceedings. Next, let us talk about tips and complaints. Auditors frequently encounter criticism for their inability to detect more instances of fraud. Yet, given the inherent complexity of fraud, auditors are often inadequately prepared to recognize its presence. As previously discussed, fraud generally encompasses three primary components: pressure, opportunity, and rationalization, as illustrated in the fraud triangle. The three elements of fraud are theft, concealment, and conversion. The first element, the theft act, involves the actual taking of cash, inventory, information, or other assets, which can occur manually through computer systems or via telephone. The second element, concealment, involves steps taken by the perpetrator to hide the fraud, such as altering financial records, miscounting cash or inventory, or destroying evidence. The final element, conversion, entails selling stolen assets or transferring them into cash, then spending the proceeds. When cash is stolen, conversion simply involves spending the stolen funds. Fraud can be detected in each of these three elements. For instance, witnesses may observe the perpetrator during the theft act. Altered records or discrepancies in cash or inventory counts may indicate concealment, and changes in the perpetrator's lifestyle, often seen when they spend the embezzled funds, may reveal conversion. Employees within a company are often best positioned to identify fraud across its various stages. For example, during the theft act, auditors are seldom present during the theft act. Co-workers, managers, and other employees are usually more sensitive to signs of suspicious behavior during this phase. During the concealment phase, auditors may identify fraud through altered documents or control weaknesses. However, company accountants and co-workers, being more familiar with day-to-day operations, are often better at detecting concealment efforts. During the conversion stage, auditors are less likely to observe lifestyle changes suggestive of fraud, such as lavish purchases or extravagant vacations. Conversely, co workers and managers may be more sensitive to these alterations. Although less trained in fraud detection, co-workers and managers frequently contribute significantly to the discovery of fraudulent activities. Many instances of fraud are brought to light through tips or complaints from employees or customers. One large company discovered 43% of fraud based on customer complaints or employee tips. This highlights the importance of vigilance among all members of an organization. Employees, managers, and co workers play a critical role in detecting fraud within organizations. Despite limitations, their awareness and vigilance are invaluable in identifying suspicious activities. Next, let us talk about reporting suspicions, handling tips, and complaints. Now, tips and complaints serve as potential indicators of fraud rather than conclusive evidence, as many turn out to be unfounded. Understanding the motives behind these reports are challenging. Customers may complain due to perceived mistreatment, while employee tips may stem from personal grievances or jealousy. Spousal or friend tips might be driven by emotions like anger or blackmail. Therefore, when receiving tips or complaints, it is essential to handle them with caution, considering them only as potential fraud symptoms. Individuals should be presumed innocent until proven guilty and not unfairly targeted or accused. So, we can see that tips and complaints are valuable indicators but require careful handling. Maintaining a fair and objective approach is essential in fraud detection and prevention. Let us look into an example that illustrates a scenario where a tip provided by an employee turned out to be spurious. In a bank, branch, John, an employee, approached the operations manager and reported that she had witnessed her co worker, Julie, hiding a bundle of bills. In response, auditors and security personnel meticulously examined the bank's records and cash vaults for several days, causing distress among the staff and fostering an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust. After thorough investigation, it was uncovered that Julie was into relationship with John's boyfriend, and John's tip was fabricated out of jealousy. Subsequently, John chose to resign from her position, and due to the sensitive nature of the situation involving personal relationship, branch manager opted not to disclose the true reason behind the investigation to all employees. This illustration highlights the importance of verifying the credibility of tips before initiating investigations, impact of false allegations on workplace dynamics and employee morale, need for clear communication and transparency in handling sensitive issues. There are several reasons why individuals hesitate to come forward with knowledge or suspicion of fraud. It is often difficult to confirm that fraud is occurring. There is fear of retaliation for whistleblowing is a significant concern. Intimidation by the perpetrator can prevent reporting. Some may believe that reporting wrongdoing is morally questionable. Many organizations lack supportive environment for reporting. Next, let us unravel the causes of reluctance in reporting fraud. In most organizations, individuals often possess knowledge or suspicion regarding fraudulent activities but hesitate to come forward with their information. Several reasons contribute to this reluctance. Knowing for sure that fraud is taking place is usually impossible. Lack of concrete evidence, like recording evidence, individuals may only observe suspicious behavior such as sudden lifestyle changes or unusual inventory handling. A potential observant can only recognize them as mere symptoms like lifestyle changes. They may hesitate to accuse without definitive proof, fearing wrongful allegations. The fear of facing consequences often deters many potential informants. Despite being rare, stories of whistleblowers facing retaliation often worry them greatly. Recent laws, like those from Sarbanes Oxley Act, try to ease these worries by safeguarding whistleblowers. Perpetrators, especially if they hold position of authority, can intimidate potential informants into silence. Co-workers have avoided reporting fraud for years due to fear of repercussions from dominant personalities. Some perpetrators use their power to scare and quickly punish those who question them. Cultural norms and upbringing often discourage reporting on others even when they are doing something wrong. This conditioning can lead individuals to hesitate in reporting fraudulent activities, viewing it as betrayal or unethical behavior. However, by addressing these concerns and supporting whistleblowers, organizations can encourage reporting fraud, protecting against financial losses, and maintaining integrity. To highlight people's hesitancy to report wrongdoing, let us examine this real life example. Scott, a junior in high school, was in a class where grades depended mostly on how many projects he finished. Grades depended on the number of projects completed, the teacher stressed on working alone, warning that despite teamwork would result in failing. Despite the rule against collaboration, some students formed groups sharing work and copying projects. Scott struggled to keep up on his own and faced a dilemma to cheat for an A or settle for a B. Scott dad also struggled. He didn't want Scott to cheat or settle for a B. His advice was for Scott to neither cheat nor accept a lower grade, but rather to speak to the teacher and resolve this issue. When asked, Scott immediately responded, I can't. When asked why, he explained, they are my friends and I can't betray them. So, Scott's choice not to report demonstrates the common hesitancy to be an informant. Another reason why employees and others hesitate to report suspicions or knowledge of fraud is the lack of clear processes within organizations. In many cases, individuals are unsure whom to approach or how to convey the information. They are also uncertain about potential consequences of coming forward. Additionally, there is often uncertainty about whether their reports would remain anonymous or if their identity as whistleblowers would be revealed. New whistleblowing laws has significantly improved the effectiveness of reporting tips and complaints, especially within public companies. These laws require every public company to set up a whistleblower system and encourage its use among employees. Consequently, numerous frauds that were previously unknown are now coming to light. Even before the enactment of these laws, some organizations recognize the importance of encouraging and addressing tips from employees. For example, Domino's Pizza introduced a hotline for drivers to report situations where they felt pressured to deliver pizzas within an unreasonable time frame, ensuring complete anonymity for the employees. Another company has categorized fraud as an unacceptable behavior alongside drug use and discrimination and has implemented extensive training for employees on reporting procedures. This training is conducted through seminars, posters, and billboard cards. Employees were briefed on 5 avenues available to them if they suspected misconduct, reporting to their manager, uh, corporate security, internal audit, a company appointed ombudsman, or an independent hotline. The whistleblowing system enhances an atmosphere of open reporting within the organizations, encouraging employees to confidently report fraudulent activities to management or other designated channels. Companies equipped with whistleblowing hotlines have effectively uncovered numerous instances of fraud that might have otherwise gone undetected. Many organizations have outsourced their whistleblowing systems to third party providers, with some even providing incentives for valid tips. Although hotlines are generally effective for detecting fraud, the impact of rewarding employees for tips is less certain based on research findings. Thus, whistleblowing systems are crucial for fraud detection. It is important to provide easy reporting options for employees, and there should be continuous improvement in systems necessary for effective fraud prevention. Two instances of fraud detected through tips, complaints, or whistleblowers include the GE fraud and the Revere Armored Car Company fraud. Let us talk about each of them. John Michael Gravett, a machine foreman employed by GE, raised concerns accusing GE of defrauding the government. Gravett informed that around 30 colleagues' time cards were altered that were submitted to supervisors. Despite Gravett's disclosure, he encountered pressure from his superiors to tamper with time card. But when he refused, they took it upon themselves to make the alterations. Supervisors clearly altered billing vouchers using black or blue felt tip pens, often changing project numbers to hide cost overruns. Foremen who resisted were disregarded and their vouchers were completed by higher ranking individuals. Gravett secretly duplicated manipulated time cards and billing vouchers, gathering evidence of the fraud. After presenting this evidence to senior management, he was promptly terminated from GE. An investigation conducted by FBI and the Defense Contract Audit Agency unveiled a 7.2 million falsely billed for idle time to the US government, an extensive falsification within Gravitt's shop over a span of 3 years. Gravitt's whistleblowing played a crucial role in exposing the fraud despite GE's attempt to silence them. Overall, the case underscores the importance of whistleblowing in exposing corporate wrongdoing and emphasizes the need for organizations to foster a culture that encourages transparency, integrity, and accountability. The Reve armored car case is another example of fraud exposed through tips, with the informants being competitors of the company. The discovery of fraud at Revere armored car began when competitors who were losing customers due to Revere's aggressive pricing chose to intervene. Using a video camera, they recorded a Revere delivery of 100 million to the New York Federal Reserve Bank's Buffalo branch in December 1992. The competitors aimed to collect evidence of inadequate security measures and they achieved their goal. The video depicted the driver and a guard leaving the truck unattended with its engine running while they dined inside a highway restaurant. The competitors provided the incriminating video to Lloyds of London, the underwriting group that insured Revere of for 100 million with the intention of highlighting the weaknesses in Revere's security measure. As a result, Lloyd hired an investigator to probe into Revere's operations. The investigations revealed evidence of previous misconduct. This led federal authorities to conduct a pre-dawn raid on Revere headquarters. The raid revealed what could potentially be the biggest scandal in the armored truck industry. Millions of dollars missing purportedly embezzled by Revere owned Robert and owners Robert and Susan Scaretta. It was revealed that Scaretta has accrued substantial gambling debt and may have been using Revere's armored car as a front for laundering illegal gambling proceeds. Multiple banks incurred substantial financial losses as a result of fraud, with Citibank experiencing losses exceeding 11 million and Marine Midland bank losing nearly 34.8 million. This fraud persisted due to the lack of thorough due diligence by both banks and Lloyds of London. Neither party regularly monitored Revere's operations. Without the tip from competitors, this fraud might have continued indefinitely. Reveries have been mixing funds from different banks instead of keeping them separately. Despite substantial amount being stolen, Revere always managed to have sufficient funds available to appease auditors from individual banks at any given moment. So this completes the third video on recognizing the symptoms of fraud. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and if you found value in this video, then please like, subscribe and share my channel and hit the notification bell button to alert you for the latest video. For webinar and guest speaker invites, please send me a message at accountingamir@gmail.com. Remember, effective questioning brings insight, which fuels curiosity, which cultivates wisdom. If you have any question or any suggestion regarding this session, then please put them in the comment box below or by email, and inshallah I will reply you back. Thank you so much and happy learning.